So first, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Lauren McNally. So Lauren McNally is the director of the American Management Association's Women's Leadership Center, which provides professional women with leading content and development programs that position them for ongoing growth. Lauren is energized by supporting organizations that are working to develop women for future advancement through community and meaningful education. Lauren speaks on topics for women and diversity and inclusion through the Women's Leadership Center, training.com, HR.com, and ATD conferences and virtual events. Prior to coming to AMA, Lauren led marketing efforts for the National Association of Professional Women and the Professional Diversity Network. Our other presenter today is Jeff Becker. Jeff Becker is the Director of Corporate Learning Solutions at the American Management Association and has over 20 years of experience in leadership development, coaching, and corporate education. Jeff's worked in HR, operations, and sales, where he's consulted and developed executive to mid-level management and frontline associates. Jeff is also an accomplished public speaker and has a passion for helping others learn while influencing behaviors to drive performance. So with no further ado, I will go ahead and hand it over to Lauren. Lauren, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Dan. We're really excited to be here today to share with all of you these exciting and impactful new AMA offerings that everyone that's on today's event can access through our longtime partner, Global Knowledge. For those of you that are not familiar with the American Management Association, I would like to share with all of you a little bit about who AMA is and what we do. We have been in business for nearly 100 years now as the global leaders in talent development. So what exactly does that mean? Well, basically, we help individuals hone in on a particular skill they want to improve upon or to practice new skills to take their career to the next level. We also work with organizations to support executing their strategies through our meaningful education, whether it's creating a more inclusive culture or preparing individual contributors to become effective managers. We really do it all. Next slide. And today we're going to go through really at a high level two of our highly successful programs. The first is the AMA Women's Leadership Center, or WLC, you may hear me say. We'll go over the real need to invest in women leaders and why now. We'll go through some of the risks of not developing women, what the benefits are to developing women, and how we can support you as you start this journey. Secondly, I will be handing it over to my partner, Jeff Becker. He will be going over our groundbreaking new certification, AMA Certified Professional in Management, or AMA-CPM. You will understand the business need for certification, the risk of not having your finger on the pulse of management, and the foundation of how it was created and how to get started with it. Next. So what is our background in content for women and in general in diversity, equity, and inclusion space? Well, I will tell you it's not new for us. We realized early on, over 20 years ago, that women face unique challenges in the workplace. And we knew that we were positioned perfectly to respond and support this need. Our faculty that teaches our content, they are expert practitioners and teach around the globe and able to flex to local cultural differences and different languages. Our women's content is really more than just courses, and we're going to go into some of that today. We also have a robust women's leadership center, or really a hub of content, resources, tools, and a community that truly supports women in business. Next. And the backbone of our Women's Leadership Center is to provide community and meaningful education to prepare professional women for advancement and future opportunities. We develop professional women in the classroom through our seminars to target specific needs, and also for entire organizations to support internal women's leadership initiative. And really, our classroom experience is specifically designed to give our participants hands-on practice where women can really learn in a safe environment. They can learn from one another. They support one another. They're able to practice skills and take risks so that when they return to the office, they can apply those skills with full confidence. Next slide. So to get started, I want to begin by sharing with you some really important data. So you could see in this pyramid of S&P 500 global companies, you'll see as you go higher in the chart, those percentages are the percentage that women make up in that category. So as you go higher in the chart, there are fewer and fewer women represented. And what I very much so dislike this chart, of course. What I like about this chart is that it's helpful to understand the need to get under the hood when we're talking about gender representation or overall diversity. A company can easily say that they have 50-50 representation or that they're diverse, but really, where does that diversity sit, right? Where is it in the organization? Are women included, hired, and promoted at every level? We are making up now 46.9% of the workforce, which is actually down from 51%. And you will see here that women are about half of those that represent the workers in the support staff level. So that's that bottom widest part of the pyramid there. We stay in the 40% range as we're at the professional level. And then we see a really big drop into our senior managers at 29%, then 23% at the executive level, 20.6% at the board level, and then only 6.2% at the CEO level. Now, what I'd like for you to all to think about right now is to take a moment and reflect and think about how this chart may compare to your own organizational chart. So think, where are women currently sitting? Are women being developed for future advancement to move up this pyramid? Are there goals in place to groom women for executive positions? And if the answer is your organization does look like this, there may be a serious need to maybe take a step back and look at how more women can be included, how women can be supported, and how they can be developed to move up into these critical roles. Next slide. So, the pyramid that we just went through, that last slide, really, I don't think for anyone on here was new for us to see, right? No one should really be shocked by that. It's been a long time issue, and that's why we're here today talking about this. But the reason why we really need to get serious about developing women now is because of the state of our current workforce due to the pandemic, right? Where we have so many additional layers now to worry about. Women have really taken a hit during this past, let's say, year and a half because of the pandemic. There's not only more pressure at work, but there are significantly increased responsibilities at home. And especially for working moms, pre-pandemic, on average, a woman was performing about 4.5 hours of unpaid labor during the work week. And now that average has jumped to over 15 hours during the work week. That's a significant increase. Beyond that, there's a general feeling of being stuck at work or having this feeling that you're lacking opportunities for advancement. And there's also a serious feeling of lacking connectivity and belonging with other colleagues. So the amount of layers that we have that are now layered on top of this issue that we already had is really going to set us back for the future. So we can go to the next slide. So what is the result of that? what's at risk as we start layering all of these issues on top of one another? Well, McKinsey and Co. and leanin.org recently did a study, and they found that 1 in 4 women are considering to downshift or leave the workforce altogether due to the pandemic. And as you saw, in previous slides, the number of women is already decreasing. Catalyst has also reported that women are 24% more likely to lose their job permanently during this global pandemic over men. So what that means is that companies are at serious risk of losing women in leadership roles, or women that maybe had potential to move into leadership roles. And this can really turn back years and years of progress towards gender diversity. Next slide. So let's talk about what we're hearing is needed for us to get through this. What do women need, leaders need, what do all people need right now in order to work in these new environments that are continuously changing, right? How are we adapting as organizations to this virtual or this hybrid workforce, having these extra roles and responsibilities, both inside of work and outside of work? How do we as women, communicate the boundaries that we need in order to not burn out and to continue to be successful, right? How do we stay connected as an organization? How do we continue to advance professionally? And I actually just saw, research this morning, because a lot of organizations right now are planning, are we going to stay remote? Are we going to a hybrid type of environment? And I just saw research this morning from the Harvard Business Review that work from home employees have a 50% lower rate of promotion. 50%. That is an astronomical number. So it's our responsibility as leaders, how do we make sure that women and all employees really have equal opportunities and have equal access no matter what the changing environment is? So here's what we're seeing. Skills like resilience, risk-taking, innovation, these types of skills are going to help your people be okay with change, right? Be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Take chances when things may feel a little bit, different, or they may feel a little bit unstable. And a part of that really contributes to embracing these types of skills. A big part of embracing these types of skills is having the ability to have inclusive leadership styles, right? And inclusive leadership skills, right? To really understand, what are my people going through? Being able to accept people for their differences and including them regardless of what makes them different, right? Letting people know that it's okay to fail. And if you do fail, it's a learning opportunity, right? And we'll be able to apply that for the future. It's important that we're showing empathy, right? We're asking the right questions during these times. We're actively listening. We're being supportive. Relationship building is huge right now, right? Being able to stay connected to leadership, right? Especially if you're still remote or you're in a hybrid situation, you may not have the same access to leadership that you used to have when you were in the office 5 days a week, right? You're not just popping into offices, you're not bumping into people in the hallway, right? There aren't as many social events. So you really need to make sure that your people have the skills to be more strategic and be more intentional with building those supportive relationships, building their network, continuing to reach out to people that are critical to their advancement, making sure that people understand how to be visible, right? How to get support from their peers and how to support others. Another one on here, which is huge, is virtual communication, right? It's a bit different over screen. We need to make sure that everyone's voice is heard, making sure that our meetings, are inclusive and that they're respectful, right? How are we communicating as leaders and individuals while we're virtual, so that we can have the same impact as we did when we were in person. All right, and lastly, assertiveness training. This has always been a high demand skill for women, and that has really only increased in popularity with the new environments we're working in. So, I mean, as you can see, there's a big need to not only make sure that, you know, women are being supported with the right skills for today and their future, but also that leaders in your organization are also taking on the right skills, because the real work starts with them. Next slide. So let's talk about some of the top programs offered that you can all access through Global Knowledge Now, that really will hone in on a lot of these key skills that I just went through. So, you know, thinking about how you and your people can engage, you know, to build the critical skills that you need to be successful for the future. So here are some of the most popular. Of course, we have far more than just what's on this list, but at the top there, we have our flagship Women's Leadership Certificate Program. This course is a 2-day comprehensive course that really goes far beyond the basic communication skills and teaches you, you know, how do I lead myself? How do I lead my team? How do I lead my organization? It also helps you dive into how to understand the value that you bring to the table, how you communicate that to others in your organization, and how you can add more value overall to the organization. Next on the list here is Executive Presence for Women. So this is another one of my favorite programs. It's been around for quite some time. Here you learn how things like body language and verbal behaviors affect your image as a leader, and how you can use it to increase your influence. And I love this because, you know, by the end of the program, you really understand how you can show up with confidence and you could really be your most powerful self at work. Third on the list is Leadership Development for Women. This is a great course for women who are looking to develop themselves as leaders and find their true leadership style. It helps you dive into how to build a strategic network and, of course, leverage your strengths. Last on the list is Women Leading with Impact, Resilience, and Strategic Risk-Taking. This enables you to enhance your self-awareness for future challenges. It helps you find solutions outside of your comfort zone, and it helps you to reframe uncertainty and speak up. So you could see even in these really short blurbs or descriptions that I just went through for each of these, they really directly align to those skills that are at the forefront, that are most needed for today. Go to the next slide. So how do you learn with us? So now you know a little bit about, you know, why, you know, what's the need, what's the challenge, why do women need to be developed? We know what the risk is, the benefits. We know, you know, what are those top skills? What are some of the programs? And what are the different modalities of how you actually learn with us? So there's many ways that you can do so. The courses that I just went through are currently being offered in multi-day in-person and the live online virtual classroom. Both formats are live with our expert facilitators in a hands-on experiential delivery. So participants will work one-on-one with our faculty to really understand their strengths, understand their challenges, how to work towards their goals that they want to achieve. You'll also have the opportunity to interact with participants from around the globe, from, you know, different industries, different backgrounds. And what that does, it really adds, you know, that peer-to-peer learning, networking, and that diverse thinking to the classroom. And of course, we also offer shorter learning experiences, also in a live online classroom in our 2.5-hour Express Skills courses, as well as content that can be consumed on demand through our webinars, our on-demand library. And we also offer private custom training for teams and strategic initiatives through our corporate learning solutions team. So I know I just gave you a lot, and I kind of went through this quickly, but we have so much more to talk about today. So I want to thank you for going through that with me with the Women's Leadership Center. Now it's time to hand it over to my colleague, Jeff Becker, who's going to walk us through another critical pillar of development that's necessary for our people to thrive in today's environment. Jeff will walk us through the need for AMA's certified professional in management and why it's so important to invest in our managers today. So Jeff, welcome. I am going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate it. Lauren, I'll just do a sound check with you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Outstanding. All right. Thank you. It's interesting. I've done similar presentations with Lauren in the past, and we've gone through some of these statistics around women in the workforce. And every time there's one or two that just jump out at me. And so the importance that we put on women and gender issues in the workforce is critical. So some very good information there. Switching gears slightly and giving you some numbers, as Lauren mentioned, I'm going to focus a little bit more on our managers as a whole, men, women, and thinking about how do we, in fact, determine what makes a qualified and competent manager. This is something that we at AMA really started thinking about 3 years ago. And frankly, we had clients say it to us, like, what is a qualified, competent manager? What constitutes that? How do I know if I found them? What are those skills, behaviors, character, et cetera, that they have? And so really for the next little bit of time, I'm going to spend some time talking about what that is, what we've uncovered, and how to establish a certification program for managers in your organization. So with that in mind, I want to give you some statistics. And Dan, if you go to the next slide for me, please, that'd be great. A little bit of data on management population. So first and foremost, who are we even talking about that fits under this umbrella of management? So I'll start with the upper left-hand side there. 24 million. There's 24 million people that fit in the role of a manager or supervisor in the workforce. We're talking about a lot of people. Moving to the right there in the green square, you're really talking about one manager per every 5 employees. That's about the size of a team, the average size of a team that that a manager works with. So thinking about the impact that a manager has. If we move to the lower right-hand quadrant, you'll see we're talking about 30% of compensation. So there's a lot of dollars and cents, frankly, that are spent on managers and their capability. So really important for us to make sure that they have the right skills, that they have the right competencies. And then continuing on the lower left-hand side, they make up a little over 17% of the workforce. So again, we're talking about a large population. And as we look at them, really the linchpin of connecting strategy to results through individuals. That's what a manager does. They're influencing their people and they're connecting the dots. If you think about sort of on the left-hand side, their strategy, on the right-hand side, there's people. They are the conduit. They are the linchpin in between. And so again, just giving you some numbers that emphasize how critical that is. Dan, we'll go to the next one. I'll share us a few more data points with them. This time I'm going to start on the far right, the upper right there. 58% of managers said they didn't receive any management training. So this was done in a 2019 study. There's been some similar ones in 2020, which kind of skew the results a little bit just because of the COVID world that we live in. But in this case, 58% said, nope, not at all. Not a bit of training, nothing at all. I went from an individual contributor, got nothing on how to manage people, how to work with a team, et cetera, et cetera. What's also interesting is that a lot of these folks that came through the college and university environment didn't get it there as well. So I didn't get it. I didn't get trained in my company. I didn't get it in the 4 years or 6 years of education that I've got. So I'm new to this world. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Right underneath that in the lower right-hand corner, 59, this one's still staggering to me. And actually, Harvard Business Review did another study last year, which had a very similar number. 59% of employees trust strangers more than their own managers. That one just sort of punches you in the gut. Like, really? So the trust level with management is minimal at best. And considering how many people would trust a complete stranger versus their manager. So again, something to think about, and it'll connect the dots here in just a moment. I'll continue to the lower left there. There's about $1 trillion annually wasted due to inefficient management. There's lots of studies out there around this, and I'll talk about that in connection to the GDP here in just a few minutes, but a significant number. And then that kind of makes the case for this last one, the upper left. 84% of professionals agree that having managers certified, again, with a set of core skills, competencies, character, and understanding, would increase that efficiency and essentially lead to better management. So there's a case to be made here for why we've gone down this road of what does a manager need from a competency skill standpoint to be, successful. Dan, we'll go to the next one, please. So what is this? What is this whole idea of AMA certified professional in management? And I'll just use the phrase that I use with clients all the time is it's a management framework for success. You want your managers to be successful. You want them to be efficient. You want them to be productive. This is a management framework to do that. This is the skills and capabilities. Managers must not only have the skills, capabilities, and competency to lead, but they also have to have the character to positively impact and influence people. Now, here's the analogy that I'll use, and it's not a pretty one. We know people who get things done. We all know people that get things done. And sometimes those people that get things done leave a bloody trail. I mean, in the sense of they irritate people, they're rude, they don't follow, maybe the rules appropriately, they might upset customers. So there's a character component to management that we look at as well. It's not just what you can do and how you can do it, but it's the way behind that. What's the character? What's the individual like? And how does that come through? In this AMA-CPM, we talk about both of those. What are the skills and the competencies to lead? And what's the character that I need to go to coincide with that? So again, the AMA-CPM is a standard for determining who's actually qualified to meet those criteria, because there is a whole somebody's writing in, emotional intelligence. That's exactly right. Yeah, thank you. And that's a big piece of it. We're actually going to get there in just a moment. I completely agree with you. You bet. And so knowing that and understanding that and what comes with that, and knowing how do I think about my team and my people? How am I coming across? What does that look like? All of those pieces are wrapped into this AMA-CPM. So Dan, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. This is a little bit, I wanted to share with you the impact or the effects, and Lauren did some of this too, just from a women's leadership standpoint, the impact of kind of taking our eye off of managing our people, which we've seen it big time in terms of COVID-19 and the pandemic that has occurred. I won't go through every one of these. Some of them are very obvious, but everything from turnover to inefficiency to productivity to motivation, lots of impact when we take our eyes off of truly managing the people. And by managing the people, I mean two things. I always break it down this way. There's a business side to managing people. There's processes and systems, but there's a people side to managing people. And we've got to understand what both of those are. And our certified managers have to really get and understand what are the skills and capabilities to do both. I've got to understand the business component and I've got to understand the human component. And in this case, if I don't, there's a lot of negative impact. So making sure that our managers are keeping an eye on their people. Okay, Dan, if we'll go to the next one, I'll give you a little bit more detail around this. So I mentioned that we really started focusing on this about 3 years ago. We focused on it a lot broader and longer, to Lauren's point of, we've been around almost 100 years, but from a certification management standpoint, that one really started about 3 years ago. We did a lot of research, a lot of data to look at to say, what are the core things that a good manager, that a really good manager needs? And those broke down into what we call the 4 domains. So these are 4 core domains. These break down into competencies, which I'll get to in just a moment, but these are 4 core domains, that a good manager, a solid manager needs and will receive going through our AMA-CPM program. So we'll start at the top here. Professional effectiveness. What do we actually mean by that? Mastery of personal awareness, emotional intelligence right there, interpersonal skills, enabling individuals to manage themselves and communicate their message. So there's awareness of self, there's awareness of others, but what does professional effectiveness look like? We'll talk more about that in a moment. The second one, relationship management, the ability to establish and maintain professional relationships to support strategic goals, and here it is, a culture of trust and collaboration. We saw what trust is doing right now inside of organizations and people that don't trust their manager. So how do we instill that? How do we create, and continue a culture of trust and collaboration? What does that look like? And the thing I always like to add to this is we're talking about inside the organization and outside the organization. It can't just remain inside. It's got to be the relationship management approach that we have with our clients as well, our outside partners, not just internally. Moving down the third one, business acumen, understanding the business operations. What do those look like? What's the financial side? What's the functionality? What are the strategy components? And then as well, what's the maintenance of customer-focused approach? How do I not take my eye off a customer, but still keep my eye on the finances? I will tell you, this is one of the bigger areas that we're seeing is, I'll say, almost non-existent in a lot of managers, that understanding of financial acumen and data and numbers. And I'm going to get into data a little bit deeper here in a second. But what do the numbers say and tell me? That true financial acumen we'll talk more about momentarily. And then the fourth one is analytical intelligence, the application of systematic thinking, analysis, and data interpretation to support organizational objectives. We've all heard, and we continue to see, big data and lots of data. What we are seeing is the struggle to interpret that data. What do I do with that? What does that actually tell me? How does it translate into a skill, a competency, an action, an activity for a person, in this case, a manager? So really diving a lot deeper into analytical intelligence. What does it mean? How do I use it? And how do I use it effectively with my team? So those are our four core domains. And on our next slide, Dan, you can go ahead and go to that one. I want to dive into, the key competencies that we put under each one of these. So I'll start again, left-hand side here, professional effectiveness. Really four core areas. We're talking about communication. We're talking about time management. Whoever put in the chat emotional intelligence, there you go. It's right in that section, as well as presentation skills, the ability to present internally, externally. There's some things around PowerPoint there. There's how do I present myself? How do I communicate effectively? All of those pieces going together under this umbrella of professional effectiveness. Now, I like to know, okay, Jeff, well, how does that apply to today? What are you seeing today? The two biggest ones we're seeing in there today are communication and emotional intelligence. We get more requests for those two areas than the other ones. It's not to say we don't get requests for the other ones, but of those four, communication comes up a lot and emotional intelligence comes up a lot. And a lot of it has to do with, again, the work environment that we're in. So that's professional effectiveness. Moving to the right, relationship management and the competencies that fit under that. Conflict management, motivation, collaboration, influence, delegation, coaching, and managing change. So again, same type of thing. What two come up pretty frequently for us? Coaching and managing change. Managing change at so many levels, and not just the manager level, but what does that look like? How do I manage people through change? How do I manage the business components of change? How do I manage this change of, for some of us that are going back to the workplace here in a few months, what does that look like? But some of us aren't. Some of us are still home and in our home offices or in hybrid environments. What does all of that look like? And how do I help? Again, what are the skills that coincide with that for me as a manager of a team? So that's relationship management. Again, moving to the right, business acumen, managing projects, financial acumen. There's the one I mentioned a little bit earlier. Customer focus as well, that a lot of times organizations are seeing and realizing we focus so much on internal systems and processes that we lose sight of that customer experience, of that customer focus, and how do we turn ourselves outward a bit more, along with talent management. So what's the connectivity to talent and how we bring talent in, the culture we're establishing, the way in which we influence them, the new talent, the way we onboard them, all those pieces fit into that management component. And then the last one there on the right, analytical intelligence. And again, some of this I dove into, but I'll just kind of go through the core competencies: critical thinking, analytical thinking, problem solving, and understanding data. The two key ones here, problem solving and understanding data, that we are seeing with regularity some concerns around how people solve problems and how do they understand and what do they do with data, and then how do they communicate what that data means and how I turn it into action, or how do I connect it to a skill. So that's just to give you really a kind of a high level overview with a little bit of detail though, in terms of what are the core competencies we saw in our research and that we've now put all into our AMA-CPM program. So core competencies, and again, the 4 core domains that sit right on top of those as well. Dan, if you go to the next one, please. Thank you. So I mentioned the $1 trillion, and we put this one back in here as well, just to connect it to the GDP. If you think about how much money is lost, again, because of inefficient management, it's critical. It's just critical. And I'd ask you guys to think about this for your own organizations as well. What does that mean? What does that look like? How does that translate? I also wanted to give you a sense of how management certification benefits the organization. And we're still collecting a lot of data. We've been in this process now of CPM for about 1.5 years, and really kicked everything off, unfortunately for us, kind of right before the pandemic, but we've gotten lots of great feedback on what it is, how it works. And so just some of the benefits with it. Serves as a clear indicator of manager competence. So a lot of organizations, again, were asking, like, what are the critical components of a really good manager? So we did the research, we put everything together and said, okay, this is what makes that up. And so now through AMA-CPM, I know my managers have been given the opportunity to truly understand those competencies along with the character that coincides with that. The second one there, recognizes strong performers and motivates potential leaders. So it's a way to find who's on my bench. What's my bench strength look like? Do they have these certifications, skills, and capabilities? Third one, increase the customer confidence in their engagement with the highest caliber of talent. So once you feel better about your talent on your team, you can feel more confident about the experience that the client or the customer is having as well. Decreases the likelihood that team members will leave due to incompetent managers. So there's a direct link to turnover here in that, again, think about, there's all kinds of data out there about why people leave an organization and they really leave their manager, et cetera, et cetera. This is helping to fix that and sort that out with better and more competent managers. The fifth one, excuse me, decreases the positive impact successful managers have on their bottom line. So what does it mean from an ROI standpoint, from a bottom line standpoint, from frankly, the money that we make, the success that we have? A lot of that has to do with the security, the comfort, the relationship that a manager has with their team. And what does that lead to? The last one there, helps your organization improve its talent acquisition and improve return on investment. So some core things that we're seeing, let alone just the confidence that it gives people to have the skills to manage people. Some of that is just that simple, that I just want to be a better manager of my team of 5, 6, 11, whatever it might be, and can have the confidence to move forward in various different directions, particularly those core competencies, excuse me, that we discussed. So Dan, if you'll go to the next one here, I'll kind of pull this piece together. So to Lauren's point in one of her slides, kind of how do I learn it and how do I absorb this? There's various different ways, and I'll just leave this at a very high level. There's the picture here of this gentleman holding a book. There is a management book of knowledge that we utilize, and it is quite a thick, almost textbook, but it breaks down all of those competencies and really brings them to life. As we see on here, kind of a flagship publication. It's really a benchmark of the essential tools that a manager needs, best knowledge, skills, abilities, what do they need, how do they do it, and really serves as our core content to an AMA-CPM program. Now, you might say, well, all right, how does somebody actually acquire that knowledge? Well, one is that book. We have clients that simply utilize the book and read it and really understand it, and there's some quizzes and testing around that as well. There's others that not only read the book, but they go to some classes. We've got everything from 4 days of class to 2 days of class to 1 day of class to kind of a crash course around classes to really learn and absorb and bring to life the content. We also have several on-demand options, and we have clients that do all of the above. Hey, I want the book, I want the on-demand options, I want the classroom option. And then after learning that and understanding and reading and bringing those concepts and skills to life, there is there's some testing and some exams that go along with it to actually receive the certification level, to know that someone has accomplished this, received it, took the education, and has learned how to apply it. So I said a lot there in about 20, 25 minutes. So I'm going to open it up to some questions. And Dan, if you'll kind of walk us through that, whether they're for me or Lauren, or what questions you have, that'd be great.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. And Lauren and Jeff, we do have some questions. And one of the first questions that we have is for Lauren. So, Lauren, although there are laws and many organizations have policies that have attempted to create a sort of favorable business environment for women, a lot of times, actual change hasn't manifested inside of organizations. Can you talk about, or do you know, or is there any data on, what is the main barrier stopping women from ascending to executive level leadership positions inside of organizations?
Well, that's a great question and an important one. And what we see, so we of course help organizations to either begin or enhance or get their women's leadership initiative back up and going. And for those that have maybe started and then stumbled, and they're not really understanding why they're not seeing results, why aren't they seeing engagement, why aren't they seeing women advance, even though they may have some sort of a program or a policy in place. And there's a couple of things. One is that if it is simply a policy, where you are checking a box and you are putting a sign up in the lunchroom or whatever, that's not enough. There's a lot more that goes into developing women and creating inclusive practices and giving the development and the tools to be able to advance and succeed. And one of the main things is that making sure that you have full buy-in from the organization. And that really starts at the top of the organization, making sure that leadership is fully on board. They're fully committed. They are demonstrating the most inclusive practices in the organization. They understand what their people need and what they're learning, and they're reinforcing and coaching and mentoring. That's one big barrier, is not having leadership on board, having that buy-in. That's really critical. Another is making sure that everyone's included, making sure that everyone understands the why. How does this relate to not only women having equality in the organization, having the opportunity to be developed, but what does it mean for the organization and the goals of the organization? Making sure that men are included in a meaningful and an intentional way. I see a lot of times where organizations may create a committee, or they may have leaders involved in development programs for women, and it's only being led by women. And you really need to have that diversity and inclusion from the leadership level when putting together a program like this. So that's critical. All people need to understand the why. Need to understand how to be a supportive ally, and how to just in general develop and support women. And lastly, I would say, going back to that check the box, approach, is that any type of development really needs to be engaging. So, it needs to be meaningful to the organization, to the people involved. Need to make sure that it is working towards the goals of the organization. So making sure that there's real hands-on, education happening, there's community being built, there's, people are really being developed, and they understand how it relates to their role and how it relates to the goals of the organization, and that it's also being measured by the leaders in the organization as well, and reinforced. So those are just a few of the really bigger, overarching issues that we see that kind of hold back development and initiatives from being successful.
Okay, thanks for that answer, Lauren. Really appreciate it. And I was actually going to ask you a question about ERGs, or employee resource groups for women, and how they can be more effective. But I feel like you definitely answered that, and you said it needs to be, the involvement of the entire organization needs to be included, not just the women of the organization.
Yeah, I'll just say ERG, employee resource groups, I think that they're a great way to begin. I think that they are necessary. It helps women and all people really to feel like they have a voice and a say. And I think it's a great way to gather data and to build that community. But I think where ERGs even fall short is not having leadership and all people involved to actually hear what people are saying, to actually collect what's being said, and to actually take it back to those that are in charge of developing women and others in the organization to actually put a plan together and to create that solution for change. Otherwise, if no action's taken, people aren't going to be engaged, and they're not going to see the point of participating.
Totally agree, Lauren. Thanks again for that. And then one other question I had, Lauren, is, when an organization looks at itself, so if an organization commits to more management opportunities for women leaders, what are some steps they can take? Would one be kind of looking at the organization as a whole now, and then setting goals to increase women's representation in leadership and management, or how does an organization go from where they are now to where they want to be if they want to establish a initiative to increase women's representation in management?
Yeah, well, there's really not a one way, one size fits all for that, because every organization is different, and every organization has different resources and budgetary restrictions and time restrictions and all of that. I would say, a great first step is to really take a step back and look at the data of your organization, and to see, just at the very most basic level, how does it break down? How many women are in the organization? Where do they sit in the organization? What's my retention rate? Are women falling off at a critical point, when maybe when women are being promoted into a senior leadership role, they're not sticking, they're not staying. So kind of looking at your data, seeing what the most what the most critical areas are. If you're looking to find a place to start, that's kind of how I read this question, how I'm hearing this question. So, kind of defining where the challenges sit, and then kind of prioritizing from there. It could even be, you're not getting enough women applying for your positions, so, how do I make sure I have inclusive language in my recruitment materials? How am I making it clear that we're an inclusive organization on my website, on our social media channels? How am I letting people know that we believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that we do have these great initiatives that are in place? So that's just one example there. And also just seeing, are there critical points if you want to start at a specific level? But I also think it goes far beyond, like I've said earlier, it goes far beyond just developing women, that we really need to look at the leadership. Because if you don't have that inclusive leadership and an inclusive culture in your organization, it's going to be really difficult to have something stick and to really make change.
All right, thanks so much, Lauren. And I do have a couple of questions for Jeff, and I want to be mindful of time. So Jeff, I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Sure.
And got a couple of questions around the CPM. And, the Certified Professional in Management certification is new from AMA, and we're really excited to have it here at Global Knowledge. And one of the questions we have here is, do you find that most companies have established competencies outlined for their managers? Or is that something that most companies don't really have an established set of criteria that they're looking for in their managers?
Yeah, good question. It's actually a very short answer. No. It's almost staggering how many don't have them, or say that they have them, but they're not in use. They're just, Lauren talks about kind of, putting something up on the wall or checking the box. They might have them and they live in a filing cabinet in HR. That sounds rude and perhaps very direct, but it's very accurate. And when we ask, what are they, or well, I got to go find them type of a thing. Now, there are organizations that have them and have them very spelled out and know exactly what the core behavior skills and competence or capabilities, are under each one of those. I've seen marvelous work in that area, but there's a lot that simply don't. And we're hearing more and more that don't have them, or they have them for individuals, but they don't have them for a manager level. So probably the quickest way to answer that is not really. I mean, certainly some do, but there's a lot of them that do not, or they simply have not brought them to life.
Okay, great. And another question for you, Jeff, would be, what are the largest skill gaps that you're seeing currently in managers?
Yeah. With everything that happened with the pandemic, one of the biggest, I may give you a few here. One is communication, overall communication. When do managers communicate? How do they communicate? This whole concept of we are no longer in the same office, so I can't look over my cubicle and there's Lauren and I can just talk to her. Now she's 2 states away or 4 states away or the other side of the country, the other side of the world, and I have to communicate with her through a camera along with 10 other people on my team. And so the emphasis on communication and communication patterns. The other thing that we saw and continue to hear is around, I'll say, leading people virtually, but coaching them as well. So I can't see them do their work anymore. So how do I coach them? How do I help them get better and give them what they need? So those would probably be two of the biggest areas that we've seen and heard managers needing help in, is under that umbrella of communication and under that umbrella, of, coaching and kind of seeing people in a different light because they're now in 10 different locations instead of all being in one.
Okay, great. And then one last question, you kind of touched on it. Have you seen any of the management competencies that have had to change due to the impact of COVID-19 on the workforce?
Yeah, good one. I not really change, but more kind of ramp up. Emotional intelligence, that somebody put that in the chat earlier, that one has ramped up and become even more important. And part of that is because, and again, it's a little bit different now as we're coming out of the COVID world, but we were living in it. We were living and working in the same environment all day, every day. And so there was a lot of overlap in understanding and very little sort of separation or compartmentalization of jobs and roles in home life. And so because of that, emotional intelligence has really ramped up. I would say there's a much bigger spotlight on things like trust. So the competencies themselves haven't, but I think if anything, it's the need for those competencies has gone even higher, just given what has happened with the pandemic.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate it, Jeff. And we've got a few minutes left, so we'll just go ahead and wrap up here. I want to talk about some of the recommended courses, and Lauren did touch on some of them earlier, but I do want to talk about the Certified Professional in Management exam prep course. If you're interested in earning the CPM or AMA's CPM or Certified Professional in Management certification, it's a one of a kind certification. It's state of the art, brand new. And we have 2 different courses here at Global Knowledge that can help you get from where you are now to earning a CPM. First one is the Certified Professional in Management exam prep course. And the second one is the Exam Prep Express. So what you see, those numbers there are the GK course codes. If you're interested in taking a look at the GK website, globalknowledge.com, if you put those codes in the search bar, it'll bring it right up for you. For the Women's Leadership Center, 2217, Leadership Development for Women, which Lauren talked about earlier. Assertiveness Training for Women in Business, 2568. And then brand new, 821370 or new to GK, Women's Leadership Certificate Program as their flagship women's leadership course. I do want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. And because you joined the webinar today, you can save 25% on your next course with Global Knowledge. All you have to do is enter the below promo codes. In the US, it's webinar 25. In Canada, it's CA webinar 25. And you can save 25% on your next course with Global Knowledge. So you get some savings for showing up today. If you have any questions, you can reach us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. At Global Knowledge, at GK Training, at Global Knowledge Inc., and LinkedIn is Global Knowledge Training. You can always reach us there anytime, 24/7 on social media. If you want to learn more about Global Knowledge and what we do, you can visit us at globalknowledge.com. And finally, I want to go ahead and give a big thank you to Lauren and Jeff for joining us today from American Management Association, and say thank you again to our audience for joining Global Knowledge, building skills to enable success. Thank you, everybody, for your time today.
Thanks all.
Thank you.